You ruined our lives. Get out. That's what my daughter-in-law screamed, while my son stood behind her, silent. My granddaughter threw a slipper at me. My grandson watched without blinking. No one helped. No one stopped them. So, I just packed one bag and walked out into the cold. A month later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 50+ missed calls. One message. Mom, please, it's about Dylan. He's missing. And that's when I realized they weren't calling to apologize. They were calling because their lie was about to blow up. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe. And please tell me and others, what's one life lesson everyone should hear before it's too late? Share it in the comments below. Thanks. I don't remember what I was doing when it started. Probably folding towels like I always did around that time. But suddenly, everything exploded. You ruined our lives. You ruined us. That was Trisha, my son's wife, sharp and loud, screaming from the kitchen. Then Kayla, their 22-year-old daughter, my granddaughter, screeched right over her. You had to open your damn mouth. And then Simone, Trisha's younger sister, lounging in the living room like she lived here. Well, say something, Evie. You proud of yourself? I stepped out into the hallway, still holding one of Martin's t-shirts, my son, the only child I ever raised, and saw all of them standing in a line, like they'd rehearsed it. Trisha was in her silk robe and slippers, face red, holding some papers I didn't recognize. Martin stood behind her, arms crossed, mouth shut like he always was when things got ugly. He didn't defend me. He never did. What did I do? I asked, not even raising my voice. My heart was slamming, but I stayed still. Kayla laughed, mean and sharp. Don't play stupid. You talked and now we're screwed. I looked at Martin. He looked away. Trisha stepped closer. Everything we've built, gone. Because you can't shut your damn mouth on a phone call. I genuinely didn't know what they meant. I hadn't said anything to anyone. Not about them. I didn't gossip. I didn't even leave the house. I just kept to myself, like they always wanted. If you want to scream at me, fine, I said quieter than I felt. But at least tell me what I'm being punished for. Simone crossed her arms. Oh, she wants an explanation now. She wants a little chat. Trisha shoved the papers in my face. Do you even realize what you said about Martin's jobs to people who report that stuff? My stomach dropped. I remembered the phone call a week ago. Doctor's office. The woman had asked questions about household income. I'd said Martin sometimes worked side jobs, even though he was on disability. I hadn't meant it as anything bad. Just small talk. I didn't know that would. Martin cut me off. Finally speaking. You didn't think that's always been your problem. I took a step back. My fingers were going numb. From down the hall, Dylan, my 17-year-old grandson, Kayla's younger brother, stood half in the shadows, earbuds in. He didn't say anything, didn't move, just watched. Kayla grabbed something from the table, a slipper, and hurled it at the wall behind me. You've done enough damage, she snapped. Get out. Trisha nodded like it was already decided. You're not staying in this house another night. I walked slowly to my room. No one stopped me. I put the folded t-shirt in my bag, took only what I needed, a coat, my purse, my pills, and left the rest. As I zipped the bag, I could still hear them talking, planning, venting, celebrating. Simone said something like, took long enough. I walked back down the hallway, past Dylan. He didn't move. I opened the front door. The air hit cold, but it didn't matter. I stepped outside, one bag, no car, no plan, and I still didn't understand exactly what I'd ruined a month earlier. The house felt exactly the same, quiet, controlled, heavy, but nothing had detonated yet. I woke up every day around 6, not because anyone needed me to, but because that's what I'd done for 40 years. I'd make coffee, fold the towels Trisha left in the dryer overnight, and wipe down the counters before anyone else stirred. No one asked me to, and no one thanked me. That was the rhythm. Dylan would pass through the kitchen around 7, never looking up from his phone. Kayla never emerged before 10 o'clock, usually complaining about some headache or job she didn't want to go to. Trisha would glide in mid-morning, eyebrows already arched, checking her phone and telling me she really wished the house could be quiet in the mornings. I always tried to be invisible. That was the rule, even if it was never said out loud. Martin worked nights sometimes not. I stopped asking questions about that years ago. There were stretches where he stayed home for weeks, claiming back pain or paperwork issues. All I knew was the tension between him and Trisha got worse every time money ran low. I didn't ask because I knew asking turned me into a problem. My room was technically the guest room, tucked in the back, near the laundry machines, no window, just a vent that made weird noises at night. My things were stacked in plastic bins because the closet was already full of Trisha's winter coats and Kayla's extra shoes. I had one dresser drawer to myself. I didn't complain. I told myself they let me stay here. That's enough. Simone started showing up more around that time. She didn't live there, but she might as well have. Always walking in without knocking. Always pouring herself coffee I bought. Always making little comments like, "Still hanging around, huh, Evie?" Trisha never stopped her. Martin never noticed. Simone had this way of making me feel like a squatter in my own son's house. She'd flip through mail on the counter like it was hers or put her feet on the table while watching TV. Kayla loved her. They were like sisters. Even more than Trisha and Simone were. The house felt like a sorority. I wasn't allowed to join one morning. I was making toast when Simone came in, wearing Trisha's robe like she owned the place. She poured coffee and leaned on the counter. "Hey, Evie," she said, sweet as vinegar. "You talked to anyone at the clinic lately?" I looked up, surprised. "Just some insurance lady." "Why?" She shrugged. "Just curious. They always ask nosy questions, don't they?" I nodded. "They asked about who lives here, income, the usual." She smiled too wide. "Hope you didn't say anything they could twist. Government's tricky like that." I remember frowning but letting it go. I didn't think twice. That day I went back to folding laundry, wiping counters, staying out of the way. But something about the way Simone looked at me lingered, like she knew something I didn't, like she'd just planted something and was waiting for it to grow. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where nothing feels urgent. I was in the kitchen folding napkins when my cell rang. One of those routine clinic follow-up calls. I'd gone in for blood pressure and a refill. Nothing serious. The woman on the phone was polite, reading from a form asking if my address was still the same, who else lived in the home, whether anyone in the household contributed financially. I answered honestly, without thinking. "My son Martin owns the house," I said. "He's on disability, but he does little cash jobs here and there to help cover things." That was the truth. I didn't say it to hurt him. I didn't even think it was a secret. I assumed it was common knowledge, something everyone did to get by. The woman didn't respond much. She just said, "Ham," and moved on to the next checkbox. The call lasted maybe 10 minutes. I hung up and went back to wiping the counter. I didn't notice that Simone was sitting at the kitchen island until she spoke. They ask a lot of weird questions, don't they? I looked over. She was sipping her coffee, smirking like she'd been waiting for me to look at her. "I didn't see you there," I said. "Didn't need to be seen," she replied, then added, "Hope you didn't say anything too spicy." I frowned. "Just the usual. Who lives here? What do we all do?" "Nothing strange." She raised her eyebrows and said, "You know, the government doesn't play when it comes to income, right?" Then she slid off the stool and walked away, still grinning. Something in my gut twisted, but I ignored it. I went about the day like normal, thinking nothing of it. That night, Martin came home late. He barely looked at me. Trisha said nothing at all. Kayla was out. Dylan was upstairs. The house felt heavier than usual. The next day, a thick white envelope arrived, addressed to Martin. He opened it silently at the table, skimmed the first page, then shoved it under a magazine without a word. Trisha looked at me once, flat and cold. "You say anything on that call?" she asked suddenly. I blinked. "What call?" "Your doctor or whatever. They asked about who lives here, income stuff." I just told them the truth. "What truth?" Her voice sharpened. "About Martin doing work sometimes." "Yeah, just small side jobs." "What?" Trisha stared at me and something behind her eyes hardened. "You know he's not supposed to report income while on disability, right?" My mouth went dry. I didn't mean to get anyone in trouble. I was just answering questions. Simone chimed in from the hallway. "Oops, cat's out of the bag now, huh?" I stood there frozen. Martin was still silent, flipping the envelope closed like it was nothing. I didn't fully understand what I'd done. Not yet. I only knew that something had shifted, and for the first time in weeks, none of them left the room when I entered. They wanted me there so they could watch me, burn me, and wait. Within 48 hours, the entire atmosphere in the house changed. I woke up the next morning to the sound of Trisha on the phone, pacing back and forth down the hallway, her voice sharp enough to slice through the walls. "I don't care what the paperwork says. We were never notified. And now everything's frozen. How is that even legal?" I stayed in my room. That's what I'd learned to do over the years. Stay quiet, stay invisible. But the words still found their way through the drywall. "Yes, he's on disability." "No, I don't know why this is happening." "No, I don't know who told them." Click. dial tone. I waited another hour before walking out to the kitchen. The TV was off. The air felt sucked out, like something had happened in the night. Martin sat at the table, still in the t-shirt he slept in, staring at a pile of mail. Trisha turned around the moment I stepped into the room. Her eyes were bloodshot. "You said too much, Evelyn." That was all she said at first. I opened my mouth, but she kept going. "You told them about the side work. That's what did it. They flagged it. Now everything's paused. Martin's check, our benefits, the rent coverage, all of it." Martin still hadn't looked at me. "I didn't know," I said quietly. "It wasn't meant to hurt anyone." "You think intentions matter when the money's gone?" Trisha snapped. "You told a system that doesn't care. Now they're digging." I looked at Martin. He didn't move. "Say something," I whispered. He exhaled through his nose, not even lifting his eyes. "You should have known better." That was all he gave me. I backed out of the room slowly, my legs shaking, my mind spinning. I spent the rest of the day in my room, not eating, not moving, just playing every word from that call in my head over and over. What exactly had I said? Had I actually used the word work? I couldn't remember. The next day, Simone came over earlier than usual. She didn't knock. She never knocked. She strolled into the kitchen like she lived there and said loudly, "So, I hear our house snitch caused the government scare." Kayla, sitting at the counter with a bowl of cereal, laughed without looking up from her phone. "She's a liability, Mom. Like, honestly, why is she even here?" Trisha muttered something I couldn't hear, then followed it with, "She's lucky we even gave her a room." I waited a few minutes, then walked out like nothing was wrong. No one looked up. I walked past them to get water, and I could feel the way their eyes avoided me deliberately, performatively, like I was a ghost. Simone sipped coffee and tilted her head. "Maybe you're just getting forgetful, Evelyn. Old brains do that. Can't always tell what's private and what's not." Kayla giggled. "Should get her one of those baby monitors. See what else she blurts out." My hands shook as I poured the water, but I didn't say a word because I knew now this wasn't confusion or anger. This was a setup, a shift, a punishment. They weren't just mad, they were preparing me for exile, and none of them, not even my son, planned on stopping it. 3 days after the envelope, after the silence, after Martin's cold shoulders and Trisha's venom, I knew the damage was permanent. I kept waiting for someone to calm down, to maybe acknowledge I didn't mean to cause any harm, but it only got worse. The house turned into a stage, and I was the prop they all performed around. I overheard Simone talking to someone on speakerphone, saying things like, "Evelyn's losing it, and she's becoming a problem," followed by a fake whisper like she wanted me to hear, "And she's not even paying rent." That night, Trisha and Simone announced they were having a girls' night at the house, something they hadn't done in months. I stayed in my room, thinking maybe they'd keep it low-key. I was wrong. The music wasn't loud, but the laughter was. The worst kind, the fake kind, the kind meant to carry through walls. I heard glasses clinking, high heels tapping across the floor, and the name Evie tossed around like a bad joke. I tried to tune it out until I heard Kayla's voice yell, "Wait, let me do the impression," followed by a squeaky mock voice. "Well, the government asked me, so I told them everything about my hard-working son." Roaring laughter. Simone added, "Don't forget the part where she says, 'I didn't know I wasn't supposed to.'" More cackling. Trisha screamed, "Oh my God, that's too real." I sat on my bed, frozen, eyes locked on the door like it might burst open. It felt like high school bullying, except this time, I was an old woman, and it was my own family. My hands clenched so tight I left little fingernail dents in my palms. Then came the worst part. Kayla's voice giggling. "Should we just make it easy and push her out? I mean, how long are we going to pretend she's not a parasite?" Simone jumped in. "I say we make her leave on her own. That way, no one has to feel bad. Plant the seeds. Let her do the packing." Trisha finished it off with a cold laugh and said, "Oh honey, the seeds are already planted." I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I just sat there in silence and listened to them laugh. I felt like I was shrinking by the second, dissolving into nothing in the same house I once helped pay for when Martin was 22 and broke and begging for help. They didn't want me gone. They wanted me broken enough to leave myself. The next morning, no one mentioned the party. Not a word. They smiled over coffee. Kayla wore sunglasses at breakfast, and Simone was already scrolling her phone when I walked out to get tea. It was all a performance, and I finally understood this wasn't about what I'd said on that call. That was just the excuse. They'd wanted me gone for a long time. They were just waiting for the right moment to make it look like my fault. The night I left wasn't dramatic. There wasn't a final scream, or a broken plate, or someone grabbing my arm and begging me to stay. It was worse than that. It was quiet, planned, and intentional. Like everyone in that house had silently agreed I didn't belong, and now they were just waiting for me to accept it. Trisha had made chicken that night, and no one offered me a plate. Kayla walked past me like I was a lamp. Simone sat at the dining table sipping wine, laughing at a meme on her phone while her legs rested on the chair where I usually sat. I wasn't spoken to. I wasn't acknowledged. The message was clear. You are not welcome here anymore. I ate 2 crackers and half a banana in my room. Lights off, TV on mute, just to hear some background noise that didn't sound like them. Around 9, I stepped out to put my mug in the sink. Martin was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, staring at the TV like it owed him something. I said his name. He didn't turn. Martin, I said again. Can we talk for a second? Nothing. Trisha walked out from the laundry room, saw me, and said, "Still here." That was it. No sarcasm, no raised voice, just a cold acknowledgement that I existed, and it annoyed her. Simone chuckled. Kayla came down the stairs in her slippers, saw me, and made a face like she smelled something rotten. "Don't hover," she muttered. That was the moment. Not because it was the worst thing said to me that week, but because it was the last layer of pretending. They weren't hiding it anymore. I turned, walked down the hallway, and closed the door behind me without a sound. I took my time packing. I didn't own much, just a few changes of clothes, my photo album, my pills, a small envelope of emergency cash I kept hidden inside a pair of socks. I folded everything neatly. I checked the drawers twice. I left the spare key on the desk. I didn't leave a note. They didn't deserve one. I zipped my bag slowly, trying to keep my hands from shaking. It wasn't fear. It was something colder, something older, like a sense of loss, so deep it didn't need tears. I opened the door and saw Dylan in the hallway, my grandson, 17, the only one in that house who hadn't hurt me. But he hadn't helped either. He stood frozen, holding a water bottle, earbuds dangling around his neck. "I'm leaving," I said quietly. He didn't speak, didn't ask why, just nodded once like he already knew. I walked past him, bag over my shoulder. The hallway light flickered once. Kayla's door was open, and I heard laughter from her phone. Martin never turned from the TV. Trisha didn't come out. Simone didn't even blink. I opened the front door. The air outside hit cold and wet. I had no car, no plan, and nowhere to go. But I stepped out anyway. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't say goodbye. And I didn't expect to come back. The place I found wasn't much a single room studio behind a nail salon with paper-thin walls and a lock that stuck every time I tried to turn the key. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was quiet. I paid the first month in cash and didn't leave my name. The landlord didn't ask questions. The only furniture was a metal frame bed, a nightstand with one drawer that stuck, and a chipped dresser that leaned to the right like it had given up. I unpacked slowly, placing my folded clothes into the bottom drawer and my photo album under the bed. I taped a small note above the sink. "Breathe, you're not there anymore." I wasn't scared at first, just tired. I made instant oatmeal every morning, watched reruns of game shows on low volume, and listened to the neighbors yell about lottery tickets and laundry schedules. It was strange how peace felt like noise when you hadn't had it in so long. For the first few days, my phone was silent, and I was grateful. No texts, no calls, no fake pleasantries from Trisha, no guilt trips from Martin. I told myself this was what I wanted, what I needed to disappear, to breathe. But silence has a way of turning cruel when it lingers too long. By the end of the second week, I found myself glancing at my phone a little too often, opening the contacts list and hovering over Dylan's name, then closing it again. I never messaged him. I didn't want to drag him into anything. He'd stayed out of the mess, or so I thought. The first missed call came on a Sunday morning. I was pouring tea when the screen lit up. Martin. I stared at it, let it ring, and turned the phone over. 5 minutes later, Trisha, then Kayla, all in a row. I didn't answer any of them. An hour passed. Another call, this time from a number I didn't recognize. Then 2 voicemails. I didn't check them. Not yet. That night, I turned the phone off and buried it under a towel. The next morning, it was worse. 10 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 2 texts, both from Martin. The first said, "We need to talk. It's about Dylan." The second said nothing but one word, "Please." That one stopped me cold. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my lap, heart thudding. Whatever was happening, They weren't calling to apologize. They needed something from me. After everything, I forced myself to listen to one voicemail. It was Kayla's voice, but different this time. Shaky, high, raw. Grandma, please. He's missing. Dylan's gone. We can't find him. Just call back if you hear anything, okay? My whole body locked up. I replayed it 3 times. Missing. Gone. My mind went wild. I ran through every possibility, every dark corner, every street he could be wandering. I hadn't spoken to him, hadn't reached out, hadn't even asked how he was after I left. I turned the phone off again, this time, not out of spite, but because I couldn't breathe. In 1 month, they hadn't cared if I was alive. Now, they were flooding my phone, and the only thought I could hold on to was this. Dylan had always been the quiet one, the watcher, the one who didn't yell. If he was gone, something had pushed him there, and I had a terrible feeling. I already knew what. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I lay there on the creaky mattress, my phone face down on the nightstand, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a crooked heart. Every sound outside made me jolt. Footsteps, a car horn, someone slamming a dumpster. And every time I thought of Dylan, my chest squeezed like I couldn't get air. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned the phone on, and immediately, the notifications flooded in. 17 missed calls, 3 more voicemails, and a handful of texts. All of them saying the same thing. He's missing. He left a note. We don't know where he is. Please call us. I didn't trust them. Not after everything. But I couldn't ignore it either. I called his school. The secretary transferred me to the counselor, a woman named Ms. Reed, who remembered me from one parent-teacher night years ago. She paused when I asked if she'd heard anything about Dylan. Then she said carefully, "He's been having a tough time at home lately. He told me he wished he could live with you." I froze. Did something happen? I asked. She lowered her voice. "Last week, he got into a fight with his sister. He said she told him he was weak for defending you. Then she kicked him out of her room and told him to go live with his precious grandma if he loved her so much." The words hit like a punch. I felt heat rise up my neck. "Did he leave school?" "No," she said quickly. "He came the next day, but he was quiet. I told him he could always come to me if something happened." That was the last real conversation we had. I hung up and sat in the middle of the bed, fingers clenched in my lap. They lied to me. All those voicemails, all that panic, they made it sound like he vanished. But the truth was, he was pushed, shoved out emotionally, maybe even physically. They made him feel unsafe and then tried to pin the fallout on me like I was the one who'd abandoned him. My phone rang again. "Trisha." I let it ring. Then Simone declined. Then Martin. I answered that one. "Hello," I said. There was a pause. "Mom." His voice cracked, and for a second, I heard the old version of him, the scared boy who used to call me from gas stations when his car broke down. "What happened?" I asked, calm but cold. "He's gone," Martin said. "We're doing everything we can. The police said they'll file a report if he doesn't come back tonight. We don't know where he is. He didn't take his phone." I didn't respond. "Not yet." I let the silence hang there. "We thought maybe he came to you," he added. "Why would he do that?" I asked. Another pause. Then, "Because you're the only person he still talks about like he trusts." That one landed. I said nothing. I didn't tell him what the counselor said. I didn't tell him I knew Kayla pushed him out, or that I could already imagine Simone whispering that he was too soft, too loyal to an old woman they'd long since decided didn't matter. I said only this: "If I hear from him, I'll let you know." Then, I hung up. I sat there gripping the edge of the bed, heart pounding. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a runaway. This was what happens when a kid finally sees the truth and the people around him don't want him to. And if Dylan showed up at my door, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't sending him back. It was just past noon, the next day, when I got the call. Unknown number, no voicemail. Just one single ring that didn't even finish before it cut off. I stared at it for a second, then hit redial, expecting silence or some scam message, but someone picked up. "Hello." A young male voice answered, uncertain. I didn't recognize it. "This is Evelyn," I said cautiously. "I'm trying to reach Dylan." There was a pause, then a deep breath. "Yeah, hang on." The phone shifted, muffled movement, a door creaked, and then I heard him. "Grandma," he said, voice small and shaky, like he hadn't spoken in hours. "Dylan," I breathed. "Are you okay?" "Where are you?" "I'm safe," he said quickly. "I'm with Malik. He let me crash at his place. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to go to school today and have them call home." My knees gave out, and I sat down on the edge of the bed. Are you hurt? Do you need anything? No, he said. Just, can I come to you? The question cracked something in me. Of course, any time right now. He was quiet for a beat, then said, they lied, didn't they? They made it sound like I ran away, but they kicked me out. I didn't need to ask what happened. I already knew, but I wanted him to say it, to hear his voice form the truth. What did they say to you? Kayla called me a traitor, he said. His voice was tight, like he was trying not to cry. She said I was pathetic for defending you, said if I loved you so much, I should just go live with you. Then she opened my door and threw my stuff into the hallway. Trisha didn't say anything. Simone laughed. Martin told me to just let it go and stop being dramatic. I closed my eyes. My hands were trembling. You didn't do anything wrong, I said softly. They just didn't like that you saw them for who they really are. He was quiet again. Then he whispered, I didn't want you to leave. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how. I know, I said. You don't have to explain anything. Can you come get me? He asked. Malik's place is a couple neighborhoods over. I can send you the address. Yes, I said immediately. I'll be there as soon as I can. He texted me the address right after we hung up. I grabbed my coat, my bag, and walked out without looking back. The bus ride was slow, every stop feeling like a test of my nerves. Every loud noise outside made me check my phone to make sure he hadn't changed his mind. When I finally got there, he was sitting on the front steps with his hoodie pulled up, duffel bag at his feet. He stood up when he saw me, and for a second, I thought he might fall apart right there. But he didn't. He hugged me, not a quick, polite hug, but the kind that says, you were the only person who ever made me feel safe. I hugged him back just as tightly. We didn't talk much on the ride back. He kept his hood up, head down, earbuds in, and I didn't push. When we got to my apartment, he looked around like it was a new world, small but calm, and whispered, this already feels better. I made him tea and let him sit in silence. He didn't ask about the others. He didn't say their names. He just unpacked slowly, folded his clothes neatly, and placed his phone face down on the nightstand like he didn't want it to exist. That night, he slept like a stone. No footsteps, no yelling, no locked doors, just quiet, just peace. And for the first time since I walked out of that house, I didn't feel alone. The knock came 2 days later, sharp and fast, like someone wasn't going to wait for an invitation. I knew it was them before I even looked through the peephole. Trisha stood on the other side in a beige trench coat like she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. And Martin was next to her, looking down at his shoes like a teenager caught cheating on a test. I didn't open the door right away. I let them stand there knocking again, then again, until finally, I cracked it open and stepped halfway into the frame. We just want to talk, Trisha said quickly, eyes darting past me like she was checking if Dylan was home. This isn't a fight, Martin added, still not making eye contact. I didn't say anything. I just opened the door a little wider and stepped aside. They walked in like they owned the place, immediately moving to the small kitchen table like it was a conference room. Trisha crossed her legs and smiled in a way that didn't touch her eyes. We're here because we're worried, she began. About Dylan, about how all this looks. I raised an eyebrow. How it looks to who? She hesitated. The school, the neighbors, child services. He's 17. People are asking questions. I leaned against the counter. And whose idea was it to throw his things into the hallway? That wiped the smile off her face. Martin shifted in his seat. He was acting out, he muttered. He called us out in front of everyone, said we were abusive. You know how that sounds to people. Sounds like he was telling the truth, I said, still calm. He was scared. You didn't like that. Trisha sat up straighter. You don't know what it's like raising 2 kids, managing bills, dealing with a sister who never leaves, and a mother-in-law you wanted out from day one. I finished for her. Let's not pretend this conversation is about Dylan's well-being. It's about damage control. Her mouth twitched, but she didn't deny it. Martin finally looked up. Is he okay? He asked. He hasn't answered any of our calls. He's safe, I said. And no, he doesn't want to go back. He made that very clear. Trisha scoffed. He's a child. He doesn't get to decide everything. He's 17, I said. Old enough to know when he's being manipulated. Old enough to know who actually shows up when things get bad. She leaned forward. So what? You think you can just keep him? You live in a shoebox. Better a shoebox full of peace than a house full of poison, I said. The silence that followed was thick. They looked at each other, then back at me. So, what do you want? Martin asked. You're going to keep him just like that? I didn't hesitate. Yes, unless he tells me otherwise. Trisha's voice rose slightly. You don't have custody. You don't have rights. We were trying to make this civil. I walked to the door and opened it. If you were trying to be civil, you wouldn't have waited until your lie started unraveling to show up. Dylan's not your shield. He's not your cleanup crew. He's a kid you broke because he dared to care about someone you decided didn't matter. Neither of them moved. If he wants to talk to you, he'll let you know. Until then, don't come back. They stood slowly. Trisha glared like she wanted to say something else, but for once she didn't. Martin nodded once, then turned and followed her out. I locked the door behind them. Dylan came out of the bathroom a few minutes later. He didn't ask who it was. He just looked at me and said, "Did you tell them?" "Everything they needed to hear," I replied. He nodded and went back to brushing his teeth. That night, we made grilled cheese and watched a stupid comedy on mute. Neither of us laughed much, but it was quiet. It was ours. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was living in someone else's story. I was finally living mine. The next morning, I made an appointment at the Family Legal Aid Center, walked there with my papers in a recycled grocery bag, and sat in a plastic chair for almost an hour while Dylan stayed home and did his schoolwork at my tiny kitchen table. When they finally called my name, I met with a woman named Ms. Harlow, mid-40s, efficient, no nonsense, who asked the kind of questions I'd never been brave enough to answer out loud before. Has he been abandoned, physically harmed, denied access to school or food? I told her everything carefully, honestly, without adding drama. I told her how he'd been emotionally targeted, thrown out, how I had voicemails and texts, how his school counselor had confirmed he didn't feel safe. I even showed her the call logs and the social media posts Kayla made the night I left, including the one with her laughing caption, "We finally pushed the parasite out." Ms. Harlow's expression didn't change much, but I saw the way she started taking faster notes. "You're not his legal guardian," she said, "but based on what you've shown me, we can file for emergency temporary custody." My stomach fluttered. "Will it work?" "Depends on the judge," she replied. "But it'll force a hearing, and based on this," she tapped the printed messages, "you're on solid ground." I left that office with paperwork in my bag and my back a little straighter than it had been in weeks. When I got home, Dylan was sitting exactly where I left him, headphones on, a plate of toast beside him. He looked up and smiled. Just a little, just enough. I told him what I did, and he nodded like he already knew I would. "You don't have to fight them," he said. "I'm not going back there. I'm not fighting them for them," I said. "I'm doing it so no one can take you away from where you're finally safe." The next week moved slowly. I waited for the hearing date, cleaned obsessively, cooked more than either of us could eat. Dylan started sleeping better. He joked a little more, sat closer, and didn't flinch when the neighbor slammed their door too hard. One night, he showed me a drawing he did for art class. Just pencil on paper, a small apartment with light coming through a window, and 2 chairs at a table. It looked exactly like my place. I didn't cry, but I kept the drawing under my pillow for days. The hearing finally came. It wasn't dramatic. No courtroom speeches, no gavel banging, just a judge, 2 lawyers, and a pile of evidence. Martin didn't show up. Trisha did, but she barely spoke. Her lawyer tried to claim I manipulated Dylan, but the judge read the texts, the voicemails, the school counselor's letter. He listened. He looked at me, then at Dylan, then at Trisha, and then he signed the order. Temporary custody, granted. I walked out of that courthouse holding Dylan's hand like he was 5 again, not 17. We didn't say anything on the ride home. We didn't need to. When we got inside, I made dinner. Mac and cheese with real butter, not the powdered kind. And we ate sitting on the floor because we still didn't have a proper table. And it didn't matter because that night I knew no one could take him from me. No one could silence us again. And the family that once used guilt and power to keep me small had just lost the only person who ever saw me clearly. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure the cycle stopped with me. It's been 2 months since the court gave me temporary custody, and in that time, not one person from that house has knocked on my door again. No calls, no voicemails, no Simone, no Kayla, no Trisha, showing up with fake apologies. Even Martin stayed gone. At first, I thought maybe they were regrouping, planning some legal pushback, but the silence stayed, and I realized why. Because they didn't lose Dylan by accident, they gave him up the moment he stopped being useful. He wasn't their golden boy anymore, their obedient little buffer. He was mine now. Not in the way you own someone, but in the way someone chooses to stay by your side when everyone else told them to leave. Our apartment is still small, still cheap, still loud from the nail salon downstairs. But now there's art on the wall, Dylan's drawings, and grocery lists taped to the fridge, and 2 chairs at the table instead of 1. I make breakfast, and he actually eats it. He does his schoolwork on the couch, while I knit, read, or water the fake plant by the window that I keep forgetting isn't real. We laugh sometimes, not every day, but enough. Enough to remember what it's like to feel safe in your own space. The other day, Dylan asked me if I thought I'd ever go back to the old house, not to live, just to talk. I told him the truth. I didn't leave because they kicked me out. I said, I left because I finally realized they were never going to stop trying to convince me I didn't matter. He didn't say anything, just nodded, and passed me the last piece of toast. I don't know what the future looks like. I'm not naive. I know temporary custody is just that, temporary, but for now, he's here with me choosing this, and I won't let anyone take that from him again. Sometimes late at night, I still think about the moment I walked out of that house, how cold the air was, how alone I felt, how ashamed I was, like I'd failed somehow. But now, I know I didn't fail. I survived. I adapted. I protected the only one who ever saw me, and in doing that, I finally protected myself. They said I ruined their lives, screamed it like it was gospel. But the truth is, I didn't ruin their lives. I just refused to lie for them. I stopped covering for them. I walked away from the role they cast me in. Quiet, small, disposable, and I took their scapegoat with me. Now he's just a boy doing homework in a warm apartment, and I'm just a woman making tea in a quiet room, finally unafraid of her own voice. I didn't ruin their life. They tried to ruin mine, and they failed.